There are many things that I have tried over the years to improve my cycling and improve recovery. I've been cycling essentially all my life. I started racing BMX when I was 11 years old, got into long distance cycling when I was about 15, kind of fell in love with that, and I've been doing it ever since. And I've noticed throughout the years that there have been trends. There used to be something called carbo loading, for example, where you basically starved yourself for a number of days of carbohydrates, and then the night before you ate a big plate of pasta and to hopefully super saturate your muscles with glycogen, and that never worked. And so recently, in the last couple of years, I've tried different things because, we all drink the Kool-Aid, we try stuff. So here's a list of 7 things. Some of them actually do help, and this is all subjective. It's not something as simple as I was able to do this many power numbers and I did this product and now I'm doing this much power. So I'm going to give you the list of these things that I've tried. Some of them have worked, some of them haven't, and there's actually a physiological reason why they probably work and don't. And so I'm going to use my experience as a doctor to give you insight as to why these things might work for you and may not. But let me know in the comments section. You may disagree. Something that did not work for me may work for you, and that doesn't mean that it's bad or that it's good. It just means it works for you. So keep doing what you're doing, but this will give you some insight, and maybe my experiences can help you. So let's do number 1. Number 1 is massage. Massage is a plus. It's a thumbs up, because what happens is when you go and exercise and your muscles get tired, there's a number of things that happen to muscles where massage actually is beneficial. When you overdo exercise, whether it's exercise such as weightlifting, or you exercise too hard by riding too far, there are different physiological things that happen in our muscles when we do those different types of exercise. But ultimately, muscles get tight, muscles become uncomfortable. And the way to heal muscles in both cases is to supply nutrients and oxygen to the muscle itself so that the muscle can recover. And ultimately, that's what recovery really is. It isn't about pain relief. In other words, taking a bunch of pain pills doesn't help the muscle recover. What you want is a greater input of oxygen and nutrients such as carbohydrates into the muscle to replenish what we've lost. In terms of cycling, in terms of weightlifting, usually it's more protein-based. But massage actually helps for a number of reasons. The first is, if you overdo your riding, the next day it's hard to ride, but more importantly, it's hard to sleep because your muscles are uncomfortable. And if you do some massage on your thigh muscles, your hamstrings, your glutes, and your calves, you will sleep better, which means you're going to feel much better the next day. And massage helps circulate blood through the muscle as well as lymph, and that helps recovery. So plus for massage. Now at the end of the video, if you'd like to learn how to do self-massage that's very effective for cycling, I'll put at the end of the video, I'll put a box right here, and you can click that box and I'll teach you exactly how to do self-massage. If you have a massage therapist, that's great, but it becomes a little bit expensive to do that. So number 2, stretching. Stretching is a negative. It's a thumbs down. Now I understand that I'm going against the grain here, and well, quite frankly, many people are going to be against this and are going to find that flexibility training does help. I personally have not noticed that flexibility helps me, but it may help you. Here's the reason why, though, flexibility does not, in particular, help many cyclists. And the answer is because our sport does not require an extreme amount of flexibility. We're not doing Taekwondo. So in a martial art, you need enough flexibility to kick someone's head. If you can't even get your foot up there, then you don't even have the prerequisites to do the actual sport. But with cycling, our knee never does a full flexion, our knee never does a full extension. Our back never has to have extreme flexibility. It used to be thought, and I remember, I think in Greg LeMond's original book, because that was a long time ago, Bernard Hinault said stretching your hamstrings is important so that you could raise your saddle to higher levels to get more power. And that was the thing back then, and I used to stretch all the time. But stretching never felt as if it improved my cycling performance. Now, they used to say that stretching helps with recovery, that stretching helps with the soreness that you get the day after exercise. They thought that stretching would give you more power. All of these have essentially, in the research, in the literature, has been proven to be the exact opposite. Being flexible, just because you could do a pancake or the splits, does not necessarily make you a better cyclist, because that's not something that's required for our sport. This topic comes up a lot with flexibility, that because we're not using a full range of motion, our muscles will get tight, our muscles will get sore, and that stretching helps that. And if that helps people and it helps you, then that's fine. But in the literature, that doesn't pan out. So that's why I just don't put a lot of value in stretching. What I do put a lot of value in is coordinated muscular activity, isometric activity, that we teach our body, our spine, how to stay stable. We teach our hips how to be strong. Pliability is different than flexibility. So if you have strong hips, if you have strong muscles and tendons, and you have a strong core, then that will protect you more from injury than a high amount of flexibility. And that's just been my experience as a chiropractor as well as for myself. Number 3, recovery rides. This I learned early on in my life, that you go hard, then you go easy, then you go hard, and then you go easy. It's very difficult, unless you're young or you just are a fantastic athlete, to just go hard every single day. If I do a long ride, or I do a ride that's difficult for my level of fitness, then the following day, if I do a very easy ride, and we're talking smelling the roses, sometimes I'll just go on my rollers and just spin the legs real easy for 20 minutes. Very often, the following day, I actually feel a whole lot better. If I don't do a recovery ride, if I ride really hard on a Sunday, and then Monday I do nothing, and then Tuesday I try to ride, sometimes that hard, I'll still be paying for it, at least at my age, I'll still be paying for it on Tuesday from that Sunday ride. But if I ride just 20 minutes on the rollers on Monday, on Tuesday I feel much better. So for recovery rides, it's a thumbs up, it's a plus. Number 4, very popular right now, and it's been popular for a number of years, ice baths. This is where you take about 20 pounds of ice, pour it into your bathtub, fill up the water, and then just hold on to your cojones and just get in there and just freeze your body for about maybe 4 or 5 minutes, until when you come out, it's almost like your legs are just beet red, totally iced. I'll tell you what ice baths really work for. Pain. If you're in pain, ice will help the pain. But what's interesting about the ice baths is once it became popular, everyone started doing it, myself included, just to see what the recovery methods were. But then research started coming out that found that when you have an injury or you exercise, the inflammatory process, which normally we view as a very bad thing, is part of the natural process needed to heal. In other words, you don't want to stop the inflammatory process. You want the inflammatory process to occur. And the person who coined the term, it was an orthopedic surgeon who coined the term RICE, rest, ice, compression, elevation, back in the 70s. He has actually come out and said he made a mistake with the ice component, that icing injuries is actually not a great idea. Sure, it numbs the area and helps pain, but it actually hastens recovery, meaning you don't recover as much. So if you're exercising in the gym or doing a long bike ride and you want to think that you want to improve recovery by icing it, you're making a big mistake. And I have found personally that ice does reduce pain, but actually in the long run, the whole reason we're exercising is to improve our athletic abilities. So the inflammatory process, interestingly enough, is part of the healing process. And when you think about it, if you were to go out for a long bike ride and deplete your muscles of glycogen, what does recovery really mean? Does recovery really mean pain-free? Because that's easy to do, just take a Vicodin. No. Recovery means your muscles were replenished with the proper amount of glycogen, and now your muscles have recovered enough from the exercise that the following time you do a bike ride, you're actually stronger. That's what recovery really means. So the thing to do after a long bike ride is to try to replenish the glycogen and the fluids, but actually help dilate the blood vessels so more oxygen and nutrients can get to the tissues. So in other words, keeping your legs warm rather than freezing them to death, as well as the parts in between the legs, will actually help your recovery much better. And that's what I have personally found. Number 5, protein shakes. This is very popular in bodybuilding and in powerlifting, that you exercise hard, you break down the muscle tissue, and then you eat protein right after the exercise, because there's this window where your body is more absorbing those amino acids. This is very true for muscle activity that involves what's called an eccentric contraction. And most of the soreness that occurs from us exercising is where we lower the weight. So if I'm using my bicep and I lift a weight, that's not going to make me very sore. It's lowering the weight that's going to make me sore. So when a muscle is under tension and then lengthened, it actually damages the muscle cells as well as the soft tissue that surrounds the muscle cells called fascia. Now, what's fascinating about cycling is we don't have any of these eccentric contractions. Try this yourself and see if there's a difference. Go to the gym and lift really heavy weights and lower the weights really slow and see how your muscles feel the next day. Then, after you've recovered from that a week or two later, go for a really long bike ride as long as you can and don't eat enough food. Make sure you deplete your muscles full of glycogen, and you will find that the muscle soreness and feeling that you get in your thighs after a bike ride is different than weightlifting. And that's because the physiology that happens in our muscles is totally different with cycling than it is for weightlifting. Thus, the recovery has to be different. Whereas with cycling, we're trying to replace nutrients. With bodybuilding or weightlifting, you're trying to replace protein that was damaged, because how you're going to repair that muscle is you need to rebuild protein. Here, you need to replace nutrients. And thus, protein powders just don't seem to help me personally at all. And quite frankly, it doesn't make any physiological sense. What makes more sense is replacing the proper nutrients, which are mainly carbohydrates, into the muscles as well as fluids. Number 6, products that you put on your body to absorb in the skin that will help replenish some nutrients as well as filter out some lactic acid. The answer is, and this is, you have to take this with a grain of salt, okay? Because I've tried them all. There's 2 products that I really like that have been effective, and I'm sure you've tried these products as well. The first is BioFreeze, which I like from a pain relief perspective. And the second one is Lactigo. Lactigo, of course, they are the video sponsor of today, so you're going to have to take this with a grain of salt. But I tried Lactigo before they were ever a sponsor of my channel. And Lactigo, I've made many videos of this before, but you can watch those videos if you're interested. But Lactigo is one of those things that there is a perceptible difference when you're riding your bike. It's almost as if you have just one extra gear. At least that's how it feels to me. It almost feels like you just have more energy when you're riding your bike. The time or the heart rate or the power before you actually hit that lactate threshold where your heart rate's beating out of your throat, you know, that type of thing, it feels different, and that's kind of fascinating. So what you do is you take this Lactigo, and what you do is you apply it to your thighs, all over your muscles that you're using, about 30 to 45 minutes before your activity. And then once you're done with the activity, then what you do is you take a shower, apply the Lactigo to your legs after the activity. And you'd be surprised that the next day you just feel that much better, but you also feel better during the bike ride. And that's what I like about that product. So if you would like to look at it, there'll be a link down in the description. and you can click that link and see if this is a product that you would like to try. But as far as I'm concerned, this product, it's a plus. It's a definite thumbs up. The seventh and final product that I think is worth trying if you haven't already, and I'm going to give it a thumbs up, a plus, are beets or beetroot juice. Beetroot juice is a fascinating thing, not necessarily for sports, but for treating high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, people that have erectile dysfunction. There's lots of studies on how beetroot juice can significantly lower your blood pressure. Now, what it does, what beetroot juice really does is it has something called nitrates in it, and nitrates are converted by our own body into something called nitric oxide. And what nitric oxide does, it helps dilate and expand our blood vessels. Now, this is important because if you want to have more power going to your muscles, wouldn't it make sense to open the arteries that go to your muscles? If you have high blood pressure, which some people do just genetically, and your blood vessels can't expand enough, then less oxygen and less nutrients are getting to your muscles. Thus, you're not performing as well. So if you drink beetroot juice prior to an athletic event, as long as it deals with your stomach okay, you will find that it just feels almost like you have, it's the same feeling with Lactigo. It just feels like you have more energy, you can put out more power. The lactate threshold occurs a couple beats higher as far as heart rate. These are things that I have personally noticed, and I have recommended this to patients who have high blood pressure, and sure enough, their blood pressure goes down. Very fascinating, and there's tons of research on that. You can just Google that. So those are 7 things that I have personally tried. If you've tried something else that I have not mentioned in this video, let me know in the comment section. I'd be very interested. But in my whole lifetime, I have seen trends come and go. And I'm sure there's some new things that are going to happen in the future. And it's only time will tell if those things actually work. All right, what movie is this? Name that movie. Oh, my keys.
Yeah.
What movie is that?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No. What movie?
Something About Mary.
Something About Mary. Oh.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, with Mary.
Ben Stiller. Cameron Diaz was Mary.
Oh, okay.
And Ben Stiller.
Yeah.
That was my favorite scene. I've been imitating that, and nobody knows that movie.
Oh yeah.
Vicky didn't know the movie. Anyway, all right.
Have a good night.
Thank you.